I've talked about how Batman is my favorite character. Um, my favorite comic book character, that is. And I've also discussed how Detective Comics is been one of my favorite runs. Like, if you don't include, if you would take out last year's Black Widow and you look at just an ongoing series, I've said that this is my favorite. Now the annual came out, and I'm not even finished. I'm gonna be. Oh snaps! I'm gonna be completely. What was that all about? I'm gonna be completely honest. I'm not even finished. But I read this panel, this deal, and I was like, wait a minute, what? And if you've seen my community wall, I did talk about this. And Batman is saving a family from a fire, and we're like, I guess the whole idea is to figure out why the fire exists. So he saves his family. They land. He says, once he dropping them off with the I guess first responders, he says they were last. They were the last. Rest is clear for GCFD. Fire caused by faulty gas piping. The mayor's war on regulation is going to have victims. So what he's saying is that the fire that burnt this whole building down was caused by the mayor being against regulation. Because I guess the whole idea is the sort of thing that a lot of people actually believe, that regulation, or business, definitely regulation among businesses, if that didn't exist, people would do things that are going to result in deaths. Now, granted, if you've opened a business, you know a lot of the regulations in terms of the hoops that you have to go through are freaking ridiculous. And expensive in a sense when you look at even the levels of bureaucracy that you have to pass through. So I'm talking about straight up how much said regulation, it just is astronomical when you not only consider how the business has to adjust to said regulation, but also the levels that are paid to facilitate said regulation. Now, regulation in itself, if you just broke it down in terms of just the concept, right? Yes, I'm libertarian. I'm not necessarily against businesses like privately having their regulation among, not necessarily among even themselves. I'm not talking about just with like the Better Business Bureau and what they do, but this is an idea and a thing that absolutely could be done in with creative ways, minus the state, right? Minus the state just in some arbitrary, hey, you can't do this, you have to do this, and so forth. Now, the interesting thing about this that doesn't make sense, Batman's prime detective, and he thinks that the gas piping, or more so the lack of regulation, is causing this to catch on fire. Now, that doesn't even make sense, because what he's suggesting is that, again, lack of regulation means equals fire. So what he's saying is that to cut whatever corner, I don't know, some business jeopardize building on a property owner, some who have you, jeopardize their entire business because of the lack of regulation. They didn't sort of, I guess, go through this sort of idea, right? Cross their T's, dot their I's in terms of whatever they were building in terms of this building. They didn't cross the T's and dot their I's, and therefore jeopardize their entire business because of it. Batman, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make any sort of sense. This has always been the thing with the regulation. It's like they say this among like food, for example, which I think is one of the more crazy things that in terms of that go through a lot of different regulation, and it can be legal for you to sell. You have to get all these sorts of license and so forth. And the reason why that exists, a lot of people would say, well, people would poison people, essentially. It's like, yes, that's a perfectly sound business practice to knowingly poison your consumers. That makes all the sense in the world. That's a great economic model to just kill off your own citizens. And after, words gets out, right, that that food's poison, people are just going to not do anything, and they're just going to more so not even not do anything. They're going to keep giving you bits. That doesn't make sense. It's just a legitimate mainstream leftist talking point that doesn't make any sort of sense. So I was like, that's kind of weird. And to be fair, Tomasi has done a great job with Detective Comics. It hasn't been terrible. This is just a weird thing. And I'm like, okay, prom detective Batman seems to think that property owners would jeopardize their entire business or their entire building, essentially catching it on fire, meaning they would lose money just to cut a corner on a regulation. Yes, that's perfectly sound, Batman. That doesn't make any sense, Batman.